Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Puzzled Minds podcast. Today we have a guest. Her name is Monique, and she is going to be talking to you about the letter W. Well, not the letter W, but today's episode is brought to you by the letter W for World
Whole
War II.
episode based off one letter.
Yeah, the history and all that shit like that. World War II and its effects on Japan in terms of its fashion, culture, and anime. So this one is a really interesting topic. I don't even know how we got on this, but I think Monique I texted her. I was like, "Hey, do you want to do an episode?" And she was like, "Yeah, I got a really cool idea." So, we'll kind of start off with that, like introduce yourself, and then we'll kind of just get it all started.
Sure. So, hi, everyone. Also, thanks for having me on the podcast. I really enjoy listening to all these topics that you bring up because they definitely are, I would like to say, 2 a.m. conversations. And during this pandemic, like, what else is there to do other than have conversations about these things at the moment? But yeah, no, back to what you said, like, I guess this kind of came up because we both had plans to try and make Japan happen. And unfortunately, due to this pandemic, a lot of traveling changes happened and Japan happened to follow on that. But I guess in terms just of me, John and I, oh gosh, well, we've known each other since college.
Yeah, it's probably been 6 or 7 years now.
It's been a hot minute,
yeah.
if I think about it.
Damn.
But yeah, we met through a mutual friend, Vince. Vince was on one of your podcasts when you were talking about AI.
Yeah.
But yeah, we both attended UNC Charlotte. I graduated there with international business, and it just so happens that I picked up a minor, and it was Japanese. And so I studied not only the language, but cultural arts and film and business economics for 3 years while I was attending the university. So anytime we bring up something about Japan, I'm just like, oh, this. So
you are Puzzled Minds designated Japanese ambassador. So.
I was like, John, come on, let me tell you about this. I know you're gonna like it.
But yeah, so that's like I said, it's been a while, but when you brought me this topic, you told me that it was going to all piece together, and I was like, I'm waiting for this. So I did a little bit of research, but I didn't want to spoil it. As weird as that sounds, so
spoil what everyone already knows.
Yeah.
The literal history.
Yeah,
right. Exactly what they teach you in school. They're like, oh no, Pearl Harbor. Oh yay, we bombed, and then bam.
So how did this all start? So I guess Monique, take it from the top for us, because I don't even know where to begin with this. So how does a actual war influence stuff we see today?
So with this one, there was basically a book that was put together by a world-renowned Japanese artist that honestly everyone knows, or as soon as they figure out what he's tied to, then they know him. And that's Takashi Murakami. And he's worked with a lot of different artists, like Kanye West on his graduation album that dropped in like 2008. That's very sentimental to me since I graduated high school that year. And, and then it's like his only thing that's been good since, I'm just kidding. And recently he's worked with Billie Eilish and, so he's kind of like the artist behind like that Rainbow Flower and all of that. But anyway, he curated this art show and this book that came out in roughly around, I want to say 2005. And really what it did is he kind of broke in the psyche of an entire nation post-war, and how being the only country to ever go through an atomic bomb, and theirs is a hydrogen bomb, but to go through nuclear warfare and the fallout and how that shaped like their culture, their main topics for anime, and kind of like their mentality of their culture. And it's really interesting when you piece it together, because really what it comes down to is that after the book is called Little Boy, and if you did any research on the two hydrogen bombs that were dropped on Japan, Little Boy was codenamed for one of the hydrogen bombs that were dropped, and that was dropped on Hiroshima. And so really what he does is it's kind of like, well, what do what do you think would happen to an entire nation that's been through nuclear warfare like that? Like, what does that have on the psyche? Like, how does that make you feel, and what do you think the fallout would be besides medically and physically? And what he does is he just goes into the psyche of it, of like, when we went in there and basically rewrote their constitution, we took away their ability to, in any essence, defend themselves. We took away their military. So what happened to their culture is it essentially turned into them reverting to a child, and depending on the United States, essentially be the adult.
Damn.
And it's when you think of it that way, then you kind of can start connecting the dots. You're like, okay, that might explain why there's a lot of anime geared around Neo Tokyo, post-apocalypse, some kind of foreign entity invading, let's say, Japan or a different entity. If you throw back, it's the whole essence of Godzilla, if you think about it. I feel like the idea of Godzilla has changed so much, but the very
Like a foreign
essence...
entity coming in and destroying something. Oh, that's kind of crazy. I never thought about that correlation.
Like, literally, Godzilla was minding his own business, like this amphibian just like doing its own thing, and then there was nuclear testing gone by, and then whoa, he gets turned into this. And it really tries to go and teach you a lesson that, like, there's some things that we shouldn't dabble in, and there's repercussions, and that's kind of like the rinse and repeat of a lot of things in the contemporary Japanese culture that we see today.
Yeah, so I looked up a little bit about the Godzilla thing too, and they said somehow like the scales or the skin texture on Godzilla was inspired by these like the scars that the survivors had from Hiroshima, like the keloid scars. So that's kind of like the texture of his back and all that stuff in his skin. That's just kind of like a representation of the people that were affected by the bomb.
I wouldn't be surprised if they had deep connotations of that. Like, I think a lot of people don't kind of they don't analyze. I think we have kind of a stigma of overanalyzing things, but in this scenario, I think with a lot of, especially when it comes to art or cinema, it is very good to overanalyze things. And because I feel like it can definitely open your eyes to a significantly larger picture and a large, like, what the delivery is really supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. So how does Hello Kitty play into this whole thing?
So Hello Kitty, in the book Little Boy, Takashi brings up, he notes 3 very particular things about Hello Kitty's figure. And it's crazy because you don't think about this. You think it's like cute, like Fee and I love Hello Kitty. Like, we love Sanrio. Like, I mean, I love it. But you notice Hello Kitty doesn't have a mouth.
I'm looking it up right now while you talk about it.
Yeah, she doesn't have a mouth. She never has any expression.
Oh, shit.
And she has very short limbs. So characters typically with long limbs, like let's say Mickey Mouse and Goofy, they're considered like extroverts. But when you have a character with significantly shorter limbs or things like that, they're considered more of an introvert. And like Hello Kitty is essentially mute. So it's kind of, once again, like an introvert culture that's kind of like, not, I want to say that's been shamed, but it's just kind of like they're just there. I don't know. It's hard to kind of explain it, but they go into details of why Hello Kitty has those particular features. And it's interesting when you think of it that way, with the short limbs, no mouth, and no expressions.
Yeah, it's crazy because if you're trying to look in the sense of it's kind of just like there, maybe it's some type of like metaphor or whatever it is for like how Takashi maybe thought of how like Japanese culture was, and it's crazy because, Hello Kitty is like one of the biggest things I feel like that has come out of Japan. And so a lot of people don't know about that whole, like I didn't even know. I always thought that Hello Kitty had a smile, but I mean, I don't look at it every day, when I do look at it,
Right.
It's just like, it's passing by, but I just never would have put the two together.
Mm-hmm. I think it might be in a sense that he's just trying to show that sometimes I feel like they might have lost their voice
Oh
after World
shit.
War II. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
That's a very subtle way of like depicting that also as well too. I would have never ever. I was today years old when I just learned that. That is insane. It's like a because Hello Kitty, like John was saying, it's like a pop. It's almost like a pop. I feel like like icon, right? It's like almost more well known than like even maybe like Pikachu might be the only thing more cute and well known than
Mm.
Hello Kitty. But the fact that like you just said that, like wow, it's kind of it almost makes it a little bit sad.
yeah, it's when did Hello Kitty come out again too? It wasn't too long after World War II as well. Um, they don't go into a significant amount of detail in it as much as they do with like some other animes and movies. But Hello Kitty is referenced, and that's, kind of in particular those features I just mentioned,
Mhm.
and just like the timing of when Hello Kitty like came out.
So, you had mentioned like anime and stuff like that. So how did it affect like anime? Was it like their themes that they did, or like how they portrayed characters? Like how did that whole situation
Yeah,
affect?
like I think you and I talked about this just briefly in a couple text messages because I was telling you that you needed to watch Neon Genesis
Mm,
because it's kind of one of the staples.
mhm.
And Akira is the same thing, and Doraemon the same thing. So Doraemon is really interesting because that's like that blue kitty cat that you've seen everywhere,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it's like a robot, and essentially like really the whole premise of it is that he watches over a kid. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but really he's a very underwhelming child. He doesn't really do well in school, and he's always asking like Doraemon to help him in things. But the undertone is that like, it's like he kind of represents the psyche of like the Japanese people, like, having to ask for help, or, kind of being like the underdog, and then just kind of, trying to figure out how to work things out themselves. It's very interesting when you start picking apart like these messages that some of these shows try to give. Like it's really interesting when you try and understand what's going on in an entire country's mind after something like that.
Yeah, so I guess like the whole like maybe the post-apocalyptic theme of like the destruction of like Tokyo and stuff like that. I guess you can kind of see that in like Akira, and I
Mm-hmm.
haven't seen Neon Genesis, but I did like look a little bit about it, but
It's one of the most depressing animes of all time. Like it
Oh, it
is,
really is.
it's so riddled with like I don't even know how to describe it. Like I guess like philosophical messages and things of that nature that it's almost like you can watch it over and over again and it's a different experience every single time.
I
So
agree.
my question is there any correlation between like the way anime characters are depicted and this whole World War II experience with like the invaders? I've always noticed that all anime characters tend to be white. So why would a culture that's predominantly like that's literally Asian always depicts their characters as like I guess you could say quote unquote the invaders? Is there any sort of correlation or is that just a aesthetic choice?
I mean, I feel like it might be an aesthetic choice just based off of everything else that happened. Because let's not forget, like after World War II happened, like we literally went in there and cleaned house. Like we were essentially like, your emperor is literally only a figure. Like you need to, um, he's no longer, like how we have our president, and then we have Congress, and they essentially broke it down that way for them. We literally went in there and gave them a template of literally like our constitution. So I think that that kind of laid the foundation that they got westernized. um it's kind of like this really, I remember reading, and this kind of struck a chord with me, about how you have the rescuer and then the rescue. And there's a miscommunication between them, and this is something that actually is in Akira. Like the UN comes in and they're like, we're gonna save you, but the people in the movie are like, no, like Akita lives in our mind. Like it's not going to work. But they don't understand each other. So it exacerbates the issue because you have the people who are trying to rescue, say Japan, make it worse. And I think that when we occupied them and did all of this, it's like we're essentially like we're doing this for the good of the whole world, but it's like, was it really like the best thing? Did it really help them? Like, was it really good for them? It's that kind of a scenario. And I think that might have transcended into everything why we have kind of a fascination with Western culture in a very, in Japan.
Can you see that theme I'm trying to think of like an anime that's like that.
Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Yeah, they're all literally white.
Oh, like that. But well, I guess yeah, you can see that with like Naruto, like
Heroes
Hunter.
Academia. That's
Yeah,
Oh
literally
shit,
based off
yeah.
of like Marvel.
yeah.
Oh,
And the interesting thing also as well too, and like going back to Full Metal Alchemist, they look like Scandinavian white people, like the whitest of white, and even some of like because they almost have like I wouldn't say medieval, but like almost like a gothic way of dressing, even with the way the brothers look and just how towns and all that stuff are set up. So it's kind of interesting to see, like based off what you said, all that stuff just kind of sprinkled into like each anime. Like Naruto's literally a blonde white kid. He's the only blonde kid in a village filled with like ninjas.
I know. It even goes to their language. I mean, they have hiragana, which is literally like their alphabet. They have kanji, which is borrowed from Chinese, and then they also have katakana. And katakana is typically used for loan words, literally words they've borrowed from other languages in other countries. So I don't think it's uncommon for them to borrow from other, I guess, other cultures, but particularly like I feel like they were westernized so against their will and so unplanned that it really just reflected and transcended into everything that we have today.
Hmm. That's really interesting. So explain to me the whole thing of K-pop. I've noticed there's a certain degree of like, I guess is femininity the word I want to use, where they all look distinctly very feminine. Yet
Well,
seems like like but it doesn't seem like, for example, like Japanese or Chinese culture is very metrosexual to even begin with. Yet the men tend to look almost like feminine. So where did that start? Because you don't see that in the U.S. at all.
right. I can't really speak for K-pop because I'm just not very well versed in like
Okay.
South Korean culture, but I think for J-pop I know for women especially, have you ever noticed there's this unusual cute but like violent dance. So for example, it's like sexualizing schoolgirls or like sexualizing cute things, or as they say kawaii.
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
and it's a product of World War II, and it's a product of post-war. And I think with J-pop, it's kind of the same thing, especially for women. Like it's maintaining that type of cute and innocence, but then it also has like this weird tendency to what we find weird and get disturbing. It's just kind of, I don't
It's
know.
a it's a very odd element of like
It
overdoing the
is.
cuteness, but it's almost like it's not like just cute specific. There's a youthfulness to it that they apply to the, like, I guess the cuteness. Because isn't the whole term like a kawaii girl? The whole distinct thing about it is that like she's supposed to act very childish, but it's like a grown woman. Also, even the proportions are a little bit odd. You have like a girl of like like massive breasts doing kind of sexual things, but in a cute, childish way. It's a very,
Right.
very weird message, but it's just culturally accepted over there.
Right. And that's like something that for some reason kind of spawned from this. And like I said, I think it really comes from that whole when Japan experienced like two hydrogen bombs over a course of like 3 days, and when we went in there and redid that constitution, I think that something kind of triggered, like their psychosis kind of changed to where they literally reverted to like a child. And I think when you're stuck in that mentality, you, it, you don't necessarily kind of grow and adapt. I think that the sexuality just got thrown on top of what they got reverted back to.
Mm.
And there's this one particular artist that they mentioned in this book too. Gosh, what is her name? I can't remember her whole name. Chiho. Let me see. Hold up. Let's make sure we got this right. Yes. So her name is Chiho Ashima. And she has she basically came up with this art style where, what do they call it? A post-apocalypse paradise. So, for example, it'd be like a woman, like a small-breasted woman, like morphing into a mountain, and like just some really like what we consider like off-the-wall stuff. Some really weird
Deep
stuff. You
pervert.
know what I mean?
Yeah,
Just
like 'cause Japanese art is it has an element of sensualness to it. Even like the eroticism, it's
yeah.
unique eroticism. It's like
Mm.
almost like I don't even know how to even like the geisha. Is it geisha or geisha? I'm not too
It's
sure.
geisha.
Geisha, yeah. They even have an element of like sexuality to it, but it's very like gentle, artistic. It's not just like fucking get her done American eroticism where there's no eloquence to it. Everything is just sensual. Everything has to be perfect, even like the rosiness of their cheeks, all that stuff. So I've always been
Right.
fascinated where some of these things came from because they have
Right.
very distinct customs of everything.
I really think Takashi brings up a very interesting thing. He basically tries to make the argument that like Japanese pop and the contemporary Japan that we see today is literally like he tries to put into words kind of like the psychotic response that an entire nation had, and that they're essentially like traumatized by World War II. And I mean, like, who wouldn't be? Like, if you think about it, if you lived in a city that completely got flattened down by a
Yeah.
hydrogen bomb, I mean, like, what would that do to you? What would that do to a whole nation? Like, that you think about how 9/11 affected us, and like that happened literally to them twice, like 15 times worse.
Yeah,
So
that is pretty
actually,
brutal.
so I had this conversation with Tadiwa a few weeks ago, and we were talking about how Japanese culture, like sexually, I think is what is the I don't know what the word I want to use, but they're
Or
very
repressed, like things like the
yeah
way to go. Yeah.
yeah. So I wonder if that's a product of like World War II, like its effects. You're feeling it now, and so like they use kawaii culture to like sexualize to get people riled up. Is that's just something I just thought of right now, like is there a correlation between the two? Like they do that to help hypersexualize like Japanese culture, or I don't know. It's just something I just thought about.
I'm not sure, but I mean, I know that I think it's very obvious that there's some type of fascination with like innocence and some type of sexuality that's tied to it, which is really interesting. There's their teeth. For example, like girls who have their, I don't want to say canines. I think they're called like those.
Incisors.
Yes, there you go. That is the correct term. When those protrude out a little bit more, it's actually considered cute because that's what I guess a younger girl, a more childish girl would have before she gets braces. But braces is literally like a Western thing. Like we do that stuff, but no one really else does. But that's considered more attractive than someone with like perfectly straight teeth for a girl. School uniforms spur a lot of like erotica. It's just I can't 100% say that stems from that, but I feel like they definitely correlate because of the trauma that they've dealt with, and it's kind of been stuck in this mindset that cute is we've just tied cute also with sexy, and that's kind of how otaku transpired as well. Otaku is the whole community that really that's submerged in anime, manga, things like that.
Yeah, so it's you can see that in kind of like maid cafes because we were actually like looking
Mm,
up stuff to do in like Japan. Like maid cafes is a really huge thing. Like these, I
I
guess
totally want to go to one. I
I
really
know.
want to go to one.
So for those who don't know, it's like a I guess like a little cafe, but instead of waiters, the waiters are dressed up as like little maids. And so for whatever reason, it might be due to the whole kawaii culture about how being cute and is cute the new sexy, or not the new sexy, but is cute sexy over there. Um,
Right.
but like they have, you can see that in the maid cafe, or like we talk about like anime, like food wars, like whenever people have like food gasms, like they're just they literally just have like their clothes fall off, and it's just a super sexualized version of like a food gasms. So, um, yeah, no, it's crazy how kawaii culture and otaku culture and stuff like that is just so embedded now, just because of you know that whole. I don't want to say like World War II, like essentially created otaku culture or kawaii culture, but
Mm.
I don't even know where I'm going with this.
No, you're fine. I really think it's a product of it. So it's like they needed an outlet, and that was kind of the product of what happened. It essentially just became a form of art. It's, I guess, the if you think about it, if you several of these, have you ever seen Attack on Titan?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's the same concept, it's people who are literally behind walls. They're isolated, even though we know that's not the real reason, but I'm not going to spoil it for the listeners.
Yeah.
And they're threatened by an outside entity. So this is a recurring
Oh
theme in a
shit! I
lot of
never looked
stuff
at.
that you see. There's an outside and
Oh,
foreign entity that's always imposing on said group, always, and it's in a lot of animes. Like literally, if you sit down and you just write down your animes, like, oh, I didn't even think of it this way. But it's a very reoccurring trend and a very reoccurring mindset in a lot of these mangas and animes.
You know
yeah,
what?
it's always foreign invaders coming in. My Hero Academia, it's always villains showing up, trying to blow up the school every 2 seconds. Dragon Ball Z, new alien shows up, tries to destroy Earth all the time. Attack on Titan, people literally climbing over, monsters climbing over walls,
Right.
destroying the city. So,
It's
yeah, that is
yeah.
wild.
What if wait? So what if Titans are like metaphorically the USA?
That
Like
probably is
because
it.
they are like a huge super Titan, like a literal like Titan in the whole world, and so they're
It
depicted
might.
as damn, dude. I look at Attack on Titan a different way now. That's crazy.
Yeah, you know what's crazy is I didn't think of Attack on Titan that way until I actually took like a film and arts class in college, and that's kind of what got me onto this topic. Is I had a professor, and he was a white professor. He wasn't Asian or anything, but you could tell he was an advocate for the culture, and he absolutely loved what he taught and the subject he taught. And I'm so sorry I don't remember his name. It pains me. I'm gonna have to like look through old textbooks. But he was a phenomenal professor, and he literally showed us this film. It like showed us this anime, showed us Attack on Titans. He was like, all right, I want you to kind of apply everything that we've learned and kind of pick out exactly what you see when you watch this. And then it all just clicked together. It's like, holy cow, that's literally the whole thing of this. It's like an outside entity imposing and like threatening the way of living of said, these people that live behind these multiple walls.
Wait, so the professor told you to watch Attack on Titan?
We watched it in class
Oh
actually, and then
shit!
and then shortly after that I went home and I downloaded the whole season, and then I watched it from, I want to say, maybe 4 p.m. to like 5 in the morning, and I
Oh
was like
shit!
well versed
Shit!
in the whole anime.
We need to give credit to this guy. If you're listening, which you probably are, uh, we will give you credit wherever credit's due.
I'm gonna find him.
So the last thing that we were talking about is the fashion. So how did it affect fashion?
Ooh, I think so. They touch on a few things in Little Boy, and I think one of the biggest things that you see is kind of like the whole cosplaying idea and the whole kawaii movement and the harajuku, and just kind of expressing yourself, and the whole like cute culture. I mean, when you talk about the maid cafes, like they're literally wearing like French maid outfits,
Yeah.
which is honestly sexualized. I feel like in like every culture
Yeah,
Yeah.
about like
it happens.
my boyfriend wants me to wear that, so it's
It used to just be like a regular maid. Now it's just like, no, I'm that maid is about to get the business.
it's like, you know what's gonna happen when you put this outfit on. Like, come
Exactly.
on. But it transcends into their kind of like their outfits. I think one thing is like on the verge of Lolita, you know, kind of you are you guys familiar with Lolita?
No, I'm not too
No.
sure. I'm not familiar with that.
It's kind of like a cute gothic, like
How do you spell it?
if Lolita, I think. Lolita.
Okay, so just the way it sounds.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, it comes up with like some sexual,
Oh God,
like
they're
sexual
cosplay.
novel,
You
but
can put cosplay.
oh yeah, I should
John's
put
computer just got 15 viruses. Recommendation.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, these look like dolls.
Yes. You see how cute they are?
I don't know if cute would be the right
I
word.
don't know.
I'd be
You wouldn't
freaked
use that
out.
word, but I
Yeah.
would.
No, this is oh shit. Okay, yeah. So it kind of looks like Nesco.
Yeah, so it's like they all connect. It's kind of like dressing like a doll and being really cute like a doll and
Those things are terrifying.
I know like it's terrifying to us, you know,
Yeah,
but
they're like horror movie, like because they look weird because the eyes are a little bit bigger than the average human. So it's oh my god! If I saw that thing sitting in my bedroom at night,
Oh
I am
no.
jumping out the window. It's game over.
It's crazy. Wait, okay. So wait, so then maybe I missed this, but like how did this whole thing like how was it tied back to World War II?
I think it just goes into the whole reverting like somewhat to a
Like a
child
child.
mentality.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Um
Because I mean, we essentially, I know this is probably the wrong term to use because you have men and women that inhabit Japan, but we literally like emasculated an entire country.
mhm.
Bomb the adulthood out of the whole country, pretty much.
You know what I mean? Like we went in there and we're just like, oh, by the way, you've lost your sovereign right to ever defend yourself and have a military unless on our terms, you know, aka spy on Russia and China. And I mean, they're literally there to like exist. It's like they can't do anything. I would would assume a powerful country deems itself powerful. Like every country you run into, like you know, who has the big gun. You know, we still do our nuclear research, and there's other countries that do with or without our consent, and we basically took that away from Japan.
Yeah. So sorry, I'm like still scrolling through this damn Lolita cosplay. Like I
Stop! I'm
I can't
sorry.
I can't like take my eyes because I'm like, holy shit, dude, this gets weirder and weirder.
It's interesting.
Yeah. No, so yeah, like that was I was not expecting this, and now like that you said that it kind of all pieced all together. Like it really does in terms of like fashion, culture, and anime and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
thank you for coming on. That was really informative. So
Right. I feel like they might get a bad rep when people think of Japanese culture. They immediately want to segue to like hentai and and all these other
Squid porn.
things. But
yeah,
but
squid porn.
yes, but all of those things, honestly, they're a product of our intervention. And I, you know, Christianity made sex very, very taboo for them. So they had other outlets. Like they couldn't do like uncensored
Oh,
porn. So now it's in their drawings, and they have, you know, erotica that's very unusual because it's it's kind of a loophole for what Christians deemed taboo, or not right for
mhm.
people, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And so they found unusual loopholes and they adjusted uh, the best that they could with the hands that they were dealt with after some poor decisions. Like, sorry, go around invading other Asian countries and think nothing's going to happen. Like, it's crazy.
It's so unfortunate that you're seeing the after effects like generations later, because just what you said, Christianity making like sexuality a taboo. It's like we're all human beings. We need to have an outlet. So if you have an entire culture that's built on like that feels guilty for expressing that, it's gonna manifest in strange ways.
Yes.
Because every anime always has the like one chick with abnormally large breasts, or like even with just the way that like they like their pornography is just very. At least I would say it's odd. You know, it doesn't. Yeah, it's one of those things where it seems like a side effect of someone who can't properly express themselves, not in an insulting way, but like if the U.S. had to intervene, who knows what their culture would be like, and they probably would be very drastically different.
Yeah. I agree with that 100%, because before even all of this happened, I mean, the whole country was in an isolation. They did something very similar to China did, where they didn't trade with anyone outside of the country for a very long time until they found that it would be profitable and make sense. And when you go from isolation, like that isolation and such a high amount of like nationalism, I mean, that's literally what happened. Like we had a country that had been isolated from the rest of the world for so long come out and be like, you know what, we can spread our amazing way of life to everyone else around us. And then when we intervened, I mean, it's not like they ever dealt with anything remotely close to what happened. No one has.
Yeah, I got you. Like I said, yeah, thank you for coming on. It was like a really informative type of thing. So I think everyone will like this one. I think just because it's just a different way of looking at World War II. Like, we always look at the history of just like the normal, like, we bombed and then that's kind of like the gist of it. But
bombed and rolled out.
Yeah, just bombed. Yeah. So
exactly. I think we are all pretty well versed of what happened with Germany and Hitler, but then we also forget that we were also at war with Japan. So things like that.
Gotcha. Yeah. So let's wrap this up. So let's just say that you recently got these mics that you're recording with now. So do you have any like projects that you're potentially going to do in the future?
Well, I've been thinking about getting on this ASMR train, but I don't know yet.
We at Puzzled Minds, I think we support you in your decision.
100% support.
Yes.
If your kid like mine is throwing bananas against walls, Monique, it's the way to go.
We'll figure it out. I'm just gonna have a whole list of things that I think might trigger it, and then we'll go through each one. We'll figure it out.
Cool. Whenever you get that name or whatever situated and figured out, just let us know and we'll shout you out.
Okay. I got to make sure I have y'all's approval, right?
Fuck it. You can do whatever you want. We'll still approve it.
You have to break the champagne bottle on it. It's like a ship. You have to christen it.
Yeah. So if the listeners, if you like this podcast, smash that like button, that follow button, wherever the hell you listen to us. Follow us on our social media platforms, Puzzled Mind Podcast. That's our Instagram. I don't know why I didn't preface that. Twitter is Puzzled Minds Pod, and our email is puzzledmindspodcast@gmail.com, where we do encourage everyone to send a topic that we can discuss in the future. And last but not least, thank you again for the weekly episode cover art that we have made by the @official block of the week. It was inspired by the Takashi flower, or I think the what is that red?
Oh, the cloud.
The cloud.
Like the mushroom cloud.
Yeah. It was inspired by that. I don't know the name off the top of my head.
There's Time Bokon. It's based off of that anime, Time Bokon.
I'm not versed in that, so I'm just going to take your word for that.
I think that sounds right, and yeah.
And I'm going to sit here and just throw Japanese terms all day.
And I can't argue with you because I can't be like, oh yeah, actually that's wrong. So other than that, everyone stay puzzled.